It was early spring, 1993, when the hikers found it, a crisp Oregon morning, mist curling through the pine trees, the earth damp and fragrant with moss. The trail to the summit of Mount Silver was quiet, as it often was this time of year, too. Chilly for casual tourists, too early for wildflower enthusiasts. Two hikers, friends from college named Peter and Carla, were taking the trail for the first time. Their footsteps crunched softly on the gravel path as they chatted about final exams and summer plans. That's when Carla saw it, a glint of gold half buried in the dirt, just off the trail near a fallen log dot. At first she thought it was nothing, maybe a bottle cap, but something about the way it caught the faint light, stubbornly shining even in the gray morning haze, made her pause. She knelt down and brushed away the dirt with her glove. It was a wedding ring, not just any wedding ring, but a heavy, old-fashioned gold band, engraved inside with the words, "Forever yours, G. Dot," and just a few feet away was a body. The police arrived within the hour. Detective Andrea Marlowe, a veteran of the county sheriff's department, stood at the edge of the crime scene. The body was a man's late 30s to early 40s, judging by what little remained. He was partially decomposed, clothing faded and torn by the elements, but the cause of death was clear enough: a deep wound in the abdomen. The ring was bagged as evidence. The body was taken away. Over the next few weeks, the ring became the centerpiece of the investigation. Who was Jay? Who was the man? And why did he die here, alone, in the middle of nowhere? Detective Marlowe and her team combed through missing persons records, cross-referenced dental records, and even broadcast appeals on the local news. But no one came forward. Breakthrough came when the ring was examined more closely by a forensic jeweler. Under magnification, beneath the engraving of "Forever Yours, J," another inscription, almost invisible, was found, etched into the inner curve of the band in tiny, shaky letters: "Don't trust her." This discovery threw the investigation into a tailspin. Who was she? Detective Marlowe began to dig into the few clues they had. The man's clothing yielded nothing. No wallet, no ID, but tucked into his jacket was a folded piece of paper with just 3 words scribbled on it: "Meet me here." The handwriting matched the tiny letters inside the ring. The case grew stranger. A local bartender remembered seeing a man matching the description weeks earlier. He'd come in with a woman, blonde, mid-30s, wearing a green coat. They argued. The man left. She stayed behind, sipping a martini, staring at the door. Surveillance footage confirmed this. But when police traced her, she was gone. No name, no address, just a ghost. 3 months later, a woman named Jessica Loring came into the sheriff's office claiming the ring belonged to her husband, Alan Loring. Jessica was striking, poised, well-dressed, and calm. Too calm, Marlowe thought. She said Alan had gone hiking months ago and never came back. She'd assumed he'd left her. She didn't seem surprised to learn he was dead. When asked about the second inscription, "Don't trust her," she smiled faintly and said, "That sounds like Alan. He could be dramatic." But her eyes didn't match the smile. Just when the case seemed to stall, another hiker on a different trail entirely found a shallow grave. Inside was the body of another man, younger, wearing a watch engraved with the initials JLJESS, ICA Loring's initials. Detective Marlowe confronted Jessica with the evidence. Jessica laughed, then sighed. "You really want the story?" she asked. For the next 2 hours, in the interrogation room, Jessica spoke. About Alan, about the man in the shallow grave. His name was Jordan. About jealousy, about promises, about betrayal, and about how sometimes love turns into something else entirely. In the end, the ring told the whole story. A wedding ring bought in hope, engraved with love, re-engraved in desperation, buried in guilt. Jessica was arrested. But the full truth, the details of how and why remained hazy. Jessica never explained how Jordan and Alan died, only that they deserved it. Detective Marlowe placed the ring back in its evidence bag and stared at it. She wondered how many more stories it held. Objects don't speak. Not really, but sometimes, if you listen closely enough. They whispered it was June 15, 1989, a blisteringly hot afternoon in Port St. Joe, Florida. The sun bounced harshly off the asphalt of the convenience store parking lot, and the air was thick with humidity. A woman named Tara Calico walked briskly back to her car after grabbing a bottle of water and some aspirin from the store. That's when she saw it, lying face down in the parking space next to hers. A Polaroid photo. She almost ignored it, but something about the way it sat there, perfectly square, perfectly placed, caught her attention. She bent down, plucked it from the ground, and turned it over, and froze. The image showed a young girl, perhaps 10 to 12 years old, with wide, tear-streaked eyes, bound at the wrists and ankles with duct tape. A strip of tape gagged her mouth. Beside her was a boy, a few years younger, in the same condition. They lay on what appeared to be a filthy mattress, inside what looked like the back of a van. Both stared into the camera as if pleading silently with whoever might see them. Tara's hands began to shake. The photograph was immediately turned over to the police. Investigators descended on the convenience store, cordoned off the area, and began interviewing everyone nearby. Where had the photo come from? Who dropped it? When? No one seemed to know. Security cameras were reviewed, but the angle didn't cover the parking spot. The police noticed that the girl bore a striking resemblance to a local teenager, also named Tara Calico, who had disappeared 9 months earlier while riding her bike just a few miles away. Her family was called in to examine the photo. Her mother, Patty, stared at it for a long time before whispering, "That's her, that's my baby," but not. Everyone agreed. The FBI would later claim the girl in the photo was not Tara, but the resemblance was haunting. The boy's identity was an even greater mystery. No one reported a boy missing who fit his description in the area. His wide, terrified eyes seemed to beg for recognition that never came. The two children became symbols of fear, of failure, of a mystery no one could solve. Forensic experts analyzed the photo obsessively. The duct tape was a common brand, sold everywhere. The mattress appeared to have a faded floral pattern popular in cheap motels in the 1970s. The van's interior wall showed faint wood paneling, a detail that suggested it might have been a custom camper. Even the books visible in the photo, My Sweet Audrina by V.C. Andrews, lying next to the girl, were scrutinized, but nothing led anywhere. Over the next decade, dozens of tips poured in. People claimed to have seen the children, recognized the van, even heard muffled cries in distant motels. None of the leads panned out. The photo itself was examined for fingerprints, but none could be matched to anyone in the system. For every potential breakthrough, another door slammed shut. Many theories emerged. Some believed the photo was a cruel hoax, staged to taunt the families of the missing. Others thought it was evidence of a larger criminal operation, child trafficking, perhaps, or a serial predator. Some speculated that the children were drugged and coerced into posing. The photo meant to be sent to someone as proof of life, or proof of power. One witness claimed to have seen a woman driving a green van near the store that day, and that a Polaroid camera was visible on the passenger seat. Police tracked down the woman, but she denied knowing anything about the photo. Her van was searched. Nothing. Years later, digital enhancement techniques were applied to the photo. Details that once seemed murky were now clear. A faint bruise on the boy's arm, a tear in the mattress revealing yellowed foam beneath, the outline of a license plate barely visible through the van's back window, but the plate was too blurry to read. Another dead-end in 1990, another Polaroid surfaced, mailed to a newspaper in Florida. It showed the same girl, this time alone, lying on her side, her hands bound but her gag removed, a single tear on her cheek. No one knew where it came from, or who sent it. Decades have passed. The girl and boy have never been conclusively identified. The photo remains in an evidence locker, its silence deafening. Even now, the image haunts those who have seen it. The hollow eyes of the children seem to follow you, asking a question no one can answer. Why didn't you find us? In the quiet of the evidence room, the photo sits under glass. Next to it, a note from the lead detective. Sometimes the loudest screams are silent, and the Polaroid whispers still. It was an old leather-bound book, cracked at the spine and smelling faintly of dust and lavender. The diary had been found inside the knitstand of an abandoned farmhouse in rural Vermont. The house itself was collapsing, the roof caved in, windows shattered, but the bedroom upstairs remained eerily intact. Deputy Claire Nolan had been the one to find it. She'd come on a routine call after neighbors complained of strange lights and noises coming from the property. What she expected was a raccoon, maybe teenagers looking for trouble. What she didn't expect was the diary and the horrors written within it. She opened to the first page and immediately felt her stomach turn. He said it would only hurt a little. The entry was dated February 2nd, 1976. No name, just page after. Page of a young girl, shaky handwriting. At first, the words seemed harmless enough. Descriptions of school, the snow outside, what she'd eaten for lunch. But soon, the entries darken. He comes at night. He says he loves me, but his hands hurt. I want to tell someone, but he says no one will believe me. He says I'm his special girl. Claire closed the book for a moment, trying to catch her breath. When she opened it again, she noticed the pages became more frantic, the handwriting more erratic. Words were crossed out, smeared with what she prayed was only tears. I tried to run today. He found me by the river. He was so angry, he told me if I tried again, he'd bury me under the floorboards. I believe him. The deputy searched the house for any other clues. Under the bed she found an old ribbon, stiff with age and dirt. In the closet, faint scratches marked the inside of the door, tiny fingernail marks that trailed downward as if someone had tried to hold on. She called for backup, and a full forensic team descended on the house. They tore up the floorboards. In the living room, what they found silenced the room. The remains of a young girl, her arms crossed over her chest, a faded ribbon still tangled in her hair. The autopsy revealed she'd been there for decades, but no missing persons report matched her description. To this day, she is known only as the girl in the floor, and the last words written in her diary still haunt Deputy Nolan. If someone reads this, please don't let him find me again, please. Years later, another silent witness would surface. This time in the attic of an old boarding school in Maine. It was discovered during renovations. Tucked inside a dusty trunk behind a wall panel, a music box, the kind children used to wind up before bed, its tiny ballerina spinning gracefully on the cracked mirror beneath her. On the lid, written in faded ink, "For when you feel alone, the workers." Who found it claimed it played on its own when they opened the trunk, a soft, tinny lullaby that echoed through the empty attic. But what caught their attention was not the music, but what lay beneath the velvet lining. Letters, dozens of them, folded and tied with a frayed ribbon, each addressed simply, "To you." Detective Samuel Ortiz was assigned the case after one of the workers fell ill and refused to return to the attic, claiming he could still hear the song at night. Ortiz untied the ribbon and began reading the letters. "I know you're scared. So was I. You're not alone. I'm here with you, even if you can't see me." The letters told the story of a girl named Eliza who had lived at the school decades. Earlier, orphaned at 7, she was placed there and quickly forgotten by the world outside. The first letters were hopeful. She wrote about making friends, reading books, practicing her dancing. But slowly, a shadow crept in. "He watches me through the keyhole when I sleep. He leaves sweets under my pillow, but I don't eat them anymore." They taste strong. Ortiz felt a chill as he read. The letters continued. The others stopped talking to me. "They say I lie, but I know what I saw. He's not just a man. He's something else. He comes from the dark when the lights go out." One of the last letters was torn and barely legible. "If you find this, don't open the box, please. It keeps him quiet. Don't let him out, please." Ortiz looked up at the music box. It was still open, still playing its faint, mechanical tune. He closed it slowly. But the sound didn't stop. The music box was taken into evidence, the letters cataloged and stored. The attic was sealed. The workers claimed they still heard faint music when passing by the door, and somewhere in the quiet of the evidence locker, the box waits for someone else to feel alone. The lighthouse stood alone, at the edge of the world, on a barren island off the Scottish coast. Beaten by icy winds and ceaseless rain, it rose from the jagged rocks like a finger pointing accusingly at the heavens. Its stone walls were mottled with lichen, and its great glass ice stared unblinking into the black sea. Few men wanted the post. It was lonely, brutal, and bitterly cold, but to those who did take it, the money was good, and the solitude, for some, was welcome. In December of 1900, 3 such men arrived: Thomas, James, and John. They were experienced keepers, well versed in the art of tending the light. Their job was simple: keep the flame alive, keep the logs updated, and wait for the next supply ship. But something about that month was different. On their second night, a storm rolled in from nowhere, waves higher than the cliffs, wine that screamed like a living thing. The men stayed inside, bolting the heavy oak door and huddling near the hearth. At first, they joked, even laughed. But at some point, none of them could say exactly when, they began to hear it. A voice, faint at first, like the wind whistling through the stones. Then clearer. Calling their names. James claimed he saw a shape in the waves, massive and black, moving just beneath the surface. He stopped eating, sat at the window for hours, staring. Thomas began waking at night, drenched in sweat, whispering to himself about the thing in the fog. And John, now the youngest, started keeping the logs obsessively, filling page after page with words that made no sense. On December 11th, the log read, "Storm Wars." James says the sea is watching. John sleeps under table. On December 12th, voices louder. They don't want us here. They say we have to pay. On December 13th, James gone. Window open. Fog inside. Can't breathe. The last entry, dated December 14th, was just one line: we have to go. When the relief ship arrived days later, it found the lighthouse deserted. The door was unlocked. The table was set for dinner, plates of bread and still on the table, chairs pulled out. The beds were made, oil lamps full, but no sign of the men. Outside, the wind howled and the sea slammed against the rocks. The captain called for a surge. They combed the island for 2 days, climbing every hill, checking every crevice. Nothing. They never left, not by boat, not by foot. The island kept them. And to this day, those who visit claim to see 3 figures in the lantern room at dusk, standing silently, watching. And if you stay long enough, if the fog rolls in, you might hear your name whispered on the wind. The old hospital was scheduled to come down in the spring. It had stood empty for nearly 50 years, its once white walls yellowed with age, windows shattered, ivy crawling through the cracks. Locals called it cursed. At night, passers-by claimed to see lights flicker in the top floor. Some swore they heard crying, but to the construction crew, it was just another building, another paycheck. Until they found the door. It was on the 3rd floor, at the very end of the hallway, a door that wasn't on any blueprint, freshly painted, bright white, with a brass knob that gleamed like it had been polished yesterday. Above it, a sign, "Do not enter." At first, no one thought much of it, probably just an old storage room. But when they tried the knob, it didn't budge. Cut it open, the foreman said. As soon as the lock gave way, a wave of freezing air rushed out, strong enough to snuff out the lights overhead. Inside, they found a small square room, walls lined with cracked mirrors. In the center, on a pedestal, was a chair, and sitting in the chair, a doll. It was porcelain, wearing a white lace dress yellowed with age. Its glass eyes were cracked, but seemed to shine in the dark. Carved into the floor around the chair, over and over again, were the words, "Don't let her out. Don't let her out. Don't let her out." One of the workers laughed and stepped inside. The door slammed shut. When they finally got it open again, the room was empty. The man was gone. Only the doll remained. now sitting on the floor, its head tilted as though watching them. They welded the door shut the next day, but strange things began happening to the crew. One man woke up to find faint scratches all over his arms and legs. Another claimed to see a little girl's reflection in the mirrors. Even though the door was sealed, the foreman quit after finding the doll on the front seat of his truck one morning. Weeks later, another worker, who'd been drinking, bragged he wasn't afraid and broke the weld. The next morning, they found the door wide open, and the room was empty. No chair, no doll. Just the faint sound of a child's laughter echoing down the hallway. Some say she still wanders the halls at night, reflected in the shards of broken mirrors, waiting for someone to find her again. And if you stand too long in front of that sealed door, you might hear it. Soft, barely more than a whisper, "Let me out." It surfaced at an estate sale in a sleepy New England town. In a cardboard box full of old magazines and yellow postcards. A man named Richard found it, a black and white photograph, larger than the rest, encased in a tarnished silver frame. At first, it seemed ordinary, a family portrait. It showed a woman in a modest dress, her husband in a suit, and 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, seated on the front steps of a house. But something about their expressions unsettled him. None of them were smiling. Their eyes were dark, fixed on something beyond the camera. When Richard turned the frame over, he noticed something odd. The back of the photograph was covered in writing. Tiny, meticulous handwriting, covering every inch of the cardboard. He squinted to read the first line. "You were never alone. Not then, not now. We are always here." That night, he hung the photo in his hallway. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was just curiosity. Maybe he didn't want to admit it frightened him. But by morning, something had changed. He woke to find muddy footprints on the floorboards, small, childlike, trailing from the front door to where the photo hung. His phone camera stopped working whenever he aimed it at the frame. Sometimes, walking past at night, he thought he heard faint whispers behind the glass. On the 3rd night, he dreamed of the family. They were sitting on his couch now, in the dark, silent, watching. The next morning, the photograph was different. The woman's head was tilted slightly to the left. The boy's hand, which he could have sworn was resting on his lap, now pointed toward the front door. Terrified, he tried to take it down, but when he lifted the frame from the wall, the backing fell off and a second photo slipped out. This one showed himself standing at the end of the hallway, wearing the same pajamas he had on now, and behind him, just out of focus, stood the family. Smiling this time. Richard moved out that day. The photograph remains in the house, but every new tenant claims the same thing: the family watches. And no matter where you go, the boy's finger always points toward you. And at night, if you listen closely, you'll hear it. You were never alone. The clock shop still stands at the corner of a cobblestone street in Prague. Its windows dusty, but full of ornate timepiece. It is said to belong to the son of a clockmaker, though no one remembers his name now. What people do remember is what happened there one winter long ago. The boy was an apprentice. His father taught him how to shape gears, polish glass, and tune the delicate chimes that sang through the hours. But his father was stern, perfectionist, cruel. One night, after yet another beating for scratching a wash face, the boy fled into the attic and locked the door. For days, the father called for him, banged on the door, but the boy wouldn't come out. On the 7th day, the father broke the door down. The attic was filled with clocks, hundreds of them, all perfectly synchronized, ticking in unison, and in the center of the room stood the boy, motionless, a strange contraption strapped to his chest. It was a harness of gears and springs, and where his heart should have been, there was a golden clock face, its hands frozen at midnight. The boy's eye is open, and he whispered, "I fixed it." The father backed away, horrified. The boy reached up and turned the hands of the clock on his chest, and the world stopped. The sound of the city outside silenced. The snow falling past the window, suspended in the air. The father stood frozen, mouth open mid-scream. For what felt like hours, the boy walked through the stillness, winding the clocks, adjusting the time, humming a quiet tune. When the hands on his chest reached midnight again, the world resumed. But the father was gone. In his place stood another clock, tall and black, its pendulum swinging gently. The boy took over the shop. Customers came and went, though no one remembers ever seeing him speak. They say the clocks there keep perfect time. But sometimes, just sometimes, when the shop is empty, the boy winds the golden clock on his chest and everything stops. People outside freeze mid-step. Birds hang in the air. And he walks among them, adjusting things only he understands. When he's done, the world resumes, but never quite the same. And if you're unlucky enough to catch his eye while time is stopped, he might smile faintly and leave you behind when he starts it again. They say if you stand outside the shop at midnight, you can hear the ticking of thousands of clocks all at once. And just before the hour strikes, the windows go dark, and you feel as though the world has paused just for a moment. And if you listen carefully, you can hear him whisper when time stops, "Listen for me." It was just a window. Or at least that's what they thought. In a crumbling tenement on the outskirts of Warsaw, on the top floor, at the end of a narrow hallway, there was a window unlike any other in the building. The landlord insisted it was just decorative. The glass was black, the frame nailed shut. No one paid much attention to it. Until the tenants started disappearing. It began one autumn, when a young woman named Magdalena moved into the flat opposite the window. She was quiet, polite, never caused trouble, but after her first week, the neighbors noticed she stopped leaving her room. On the 10th day, someone knocked on her door. No answer. When the super let himself in, he found the apartment empty. Table still set for dinner, radio still playing softly, a faint smell of perfume in the air, and the window at the end of the hall cracked as if something had pressed against the glass from inside. They sealed her flat and tried to forget, but then it happened again. And again, a boy chasing his ball, a delivery man, a painter on a ladder, all vanished. One old tenant finally spoke of what she'd seen. "They look," she whispered, her eyes glassy. "They always look. Too long. The glass. It shows you something. Something you shouldn't see." She said the window wasn't black at all. It was just waiting. That if you stared long enough, the glass would clear and show you what was on the other side. And whatever was there could see you too. One night, the landlord tried to pry the frame off the wall. They say he laughed at first, saying it was just wood and paint. But after a few minutes, he stopped laughing. He began screaming. By the time the neighbors dragged him away, his fingernails were bloody, and the glass was warm to the touch. The window remains. Some say at night you can see faint handprints on the inside of the pane, as if someone or something is pressing to get out. And sometimes, if you walk past and glance at it, you'll see your reflection, but it won't blink when you do. And if you stop just for a second and look too long, you might never walk away. In the heart of a sleepy French village, there stood a church, older than memory. Its stone walls were chipped and weathered, the stained glass dull with dust. But its bell tower still rose high above the roof tops, and when the wind was right, you could hear the bells toll, clear and heavy, echoing through the valley. The villagers hated the sound. They said it was bad luck to listen too closely, because the bells didn't just ring at the hour. Sometimes they rang when no one was there to pull the ropes, and no one knew who or what was ringing them. The story goes back hundreds of years, to a stormy night when the tower keeper locked himself inside to repair the mechanism before morning mass. He climbed the long spiral stairs, carrying his tools, and began his work. No one knows what happened next, but when dawn came, the bells began to ring, and they didn't stop. For hours, the bells pealed wildly, so loud the villagers covered their ears and fled into the fields. When they finally forced open the tower door, the keeper was gone. His tools lay scattered on the floor. The ropes hung slack, but the bells still swung, as if invisible hands pulled them. They boarded up the tower, chained the door, and forbade anyone from entering, but the ringing never truly stopped. On some nights, when the moon is full, the air fills with sound, soft at first, then deafening. Visitors have claimed to see shadows in the belfry, dark shapes moving from bell to bell, climbing the ropes with impossible speed. One tourist, ignoring the warnings, climbed the stairs with his camera. The villagers heard him scream halfway up Dot when they found him. He was curled on the floor, eyes wide open, lips moving soundlessly. He never spoke again. They say the bells are alive now, that they're not just instruments, but sentinels. Dot waiting. Dot, and if you climb too high, if you touch the ropes, they'll toll for you. Dot, and everyone in the valley will know you've joined the others who never came down. Dot, at midnight, if you stand at the base of the tower, you can feel the stones vibrating beneath your feet, and sometimes, just sometimes, you can hear a whisper woven into the sound of the bells. One more. They say he appears just before the harvest on the edge of town, where the wheat stretches as far as the eye can see. A figure stands motionless between the stalks. He is tall, dressed in a wide-brimmed hat and a long black coat, and from a distance you'd swear he was just a scarecrow. But if you watch long enough, he moves. First, a tilt of the head, then a step forward. Dot, and then he calls your name. For centuries, farmers have told stories of the man in the field. Some say he's the spirit of a vengeful worker who was buried beneath the soil. Others say he is older than the fields themselves, something ancient, something hungry. What they all agree on is this: if you hear him call, you must not answer. One autumn, a young boy named Lucas went missing after telling his mother he saw a man waving to him from the edge of the field. The next morning, the mother found his footprints in the mud, leading into the stalks, and never coming out. The searchers combed the field for 3 days. On the third night, one of them heard a voice calling her name, soft, almost kind. Before the others could stop her, she called back. They never found her either. Each harvest, fresh footprints appear in the dirt, circling the fields in impossible patterns. Sometimes families wake to find bales of hay stacked into strange symbols. And always, always, the man in the field is watching from somewhere just out of sight. If you stand in the field at dusk, and the wind is still, you might hear him whisper behind you, your turn, and if you answer, you'll join him. Asterisk, asterisk, it arrives without warning. One night the fields are empty. The next morning, colorful tints stretch toward the horizon. Lights glitter in the fog, and the faint sound of music drifts through the air. The carnival. No one sees it being built. No trucks, no workers, no signs of life until the gates creak open and the music begins. It's beautiful. At first, children are drawn to the smell of candied apples, the call of barkers promising prizes, the laughter of clowns. But the laughter never stops. Once you step through the gate, the air feels different, heavy, sweet, and cloying, like rotting sugar. At first, everything seems normal. Rides spin, games are played, crowds cheer. But if you look closely, you'll notice the other visitors never seem to leave. They wander aimlessly, their faces pale, their eyes glazed. Some have been there so long their clothes are faded and torn, their shoes worn through. And the workers, they never blink. There's the tall man who runs the Ferris wheel, his arms too long, his grin too wide. The twins who run the ring toss, their voices perfectly synchronized, their eyes too bright. And the barker who greets you at the gate. He wears a red coat and a battered top hat, his voice like velvet and smoke. He'll offer you a ticket. He'll tell you it's free, and it is, but it costs everything. One girl tried to leave once. She ran toward the gates, screaming, her cotton candy still clutched in her fist. The barker only smiled, tipped his hat, and the gates vanished. Now she works the carousel, going round and round, her face painted like porcelain, her laughter hollow. Some say the carnival is a trap, a place between worlds, where time stops and hunger never ends. Others say it's alive, feeding on those who dare to enter. If you ever find yourself at its gates, with the music calling your name, remember, don't take the ticket, don't eat the candy. And whatever you do, don't look back when you leave, because if you do, you'll see them standing just inside the gates, waiting for you to return. In the center of a forgotten city square, Behind a pair of heavy oak doors stands a library so old that even the locals don't remember when it was built. The sign outside has long since faded, but if you step close, you can just make out the words Bibliotheca BSCURA. At first glance, it's magnificent, towering shelves of leather-bound tomes, the air thick with the scent of paper and dust, but it is quiet. Too quiet. Visitors say the silence inside presses against your skin, as though the walls are listening. There is no librarian. No staff, only the faint sound of pages turning somewhere deep in the stacks. Even when you're alone. It's said that the library contains every book ever written, and many that were never meant to be. On the lowest level, hidden behind an iron gate, there's a room few dare enter. The books here are strange, their covers stitched with leather that feels warm, their titles written in languages no one recognizes. If you pick one up, you'll feel it pulse faintly in your hands, and if you open it, you'll hear it whisper. One man claimed he found a book with his own name on the spine. He read it cover to cover, and when he closed it, his hair had turned white. Another visitor spoke of a book that described every mistake she had ever made, and ended with the words, "And now you know." Her family never saw her again. If you wander too far into the stacks, you may come across doors that lead nowhere, staircases that spiral downward into blackness, and shelves that seem to rearrange themselves behind you. And if you stay past midnight, the books begin to open on their own, the pages turn, and faint voices whisper your name from every corner of the room. Some say the library chooses who can leave and who must stay. To be catalogued. Forever. ****, it was built as a tourist attraction, a maze of mirrors on the edge of an amusement park, advertised with cheerful signs and flashing lights. But over the years, something went wrong. Very wrong. The first thing you notice when you enter is how cold it feels, colder than it should be. Even in the shade. The mirrors are polished to perfection, reflecting endless versions of yourself. At first, it's fun, disorienting. But soon you start to notice differences. A version of you smiling just a little too wide, one blinking when you don single quotes T. Another standing still while you move. If you turn too quickly, you might catch one of them still watching you long after you turned away. And if you look long enough into the glass, you'll see things you don't remember doing. You'll see moments that never happened or haven't happened yet. Visitors have reported hearing their reflections speak to them in voices that sound like their own, but deeper, colder. One man claimed his reflection stepped out of the glass entirely, took his coat, and walked away, leaving him trapped behind the surface, pounding on the glass, while the other him waved goodbye. Workers have tried sealing the place up, covering the mirrors. Breaking them, but every morning, the mirrors are whole again, and the laughter of something or someone echoes faintly between the walls. Some nights, passers-by swear they see dozens of pale hands pressed against the glass from inside, fingertips smudging the surface as though begging to be let out. And if you ever find yourself lost in the mirror house, with every exit leading you back to the same place, don't look too long, don't listen when it calls, and above all, never ever touch the glass, because if you do, you might feel a hand reach back. Asterisk, there's a place no map shows. No light reaches it. They call it the endless night. A forgotten stretch of wilderness where the sun never rises and the stars refuse to shine. Legends say it exists between worlds, a thin veil where the living can slip into darkness and never return. The few who have stumbled into it speak of an oppressive silence, broken only by distant whispers carried on the wind. Voices calling out names, begging for help. One traveler, named Elena, sought it out after losing her brother in the woods nearby. Determined to find answers, she ventured into the shadows. Guided by a flickering lantern and a heart full of hope, the trees grew twisted and blackened, their branches reaching like claws. The ground beneath her feet was soft and cold, sucking at her boots. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time lost all meaning. She saw figures in the distance, pale, shimmering forms drifting through the mist. They turned their hollow eyes toward her, mouths moving in silent pleas. Elena called back, her voice trembling. Suddenly, the shadows thickened. The whispers grew louder, overlapping into a deafening roar. She felt cold fingers brush her skin. The lantern flickered and died. Darkness swallowed her whole. When search parties found her days later, she was sitting at the edge of the forest, eyes vacant and lips stained blue. She could not speak of what she had seen, only repeated one phrase, "They took the night," and left me the silence. Others say the endless night is a prison, a place where regrets, fears, and lost souls gather, where shadows wait patiently to claim the next lost wanderer. If you ever find yourself caught in the dark, with no stars to guide you, remember, some nights never end, and some shadows never leave, because in the endless night, you are never truly alone. Thank you for joining this journey into the darkest corners of mystery and fear. Remember to subscribe for more tales that echo through the shadows, and don't forget to like and share if this story left you with chills. Until next time, keep your lights on and listen closely, because some stories never truly end. Asterisk if you enjoyed this video and want to see more mysterious stories like this. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Your support helps us bring you even more thrilling content. Thank you for watching, and stay curious.